wisdom flows from character. And that's what we're going to find in James. In his amazing letter captured for us in the New Testament, that's what we're going to explore in this installment of our series that's going through every word God inspired him to write in that letter. So let's dig in, picking up right where we left off. James chapter 3, beginning with verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. Now, as I mentioned at the start, that's an interesting definition of wisdom, almost a counterintuitive one. James is telling us that being book smart isn't enough because wisdom is not just acquired information. According to James, wisdom has to do with a life that is lived in light of spiritual truth. Because wisdom isn't just knowledge. It's lifestyle, it's practice, it's decision-making. It's not about doing well on an IQ test. It's about doing well on a lifestyle test. We tend to think that wisdom is about orthodoxy. And that's a word that simply means right thinking. But it's actually orthopraxis that is the heart of wisdom. And orthopraxis simply means right living. Now, that takes some orthodoxy, but if you stop at right thinking alone, then you aren't wise. You're just an educated fool. So how do we get on the path to real wisdom? James already gave us a hint. Let me read it again. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. Real wisdom is a rightly lived life. And a rightly lived life, one that flows from wisdom, is marked by a singular trait: humility. Now, why is humility so critical to living a wise life? Because it's humility that makes you teachable. It takes humility to learn, humility to admit what you don't know, humility to realize where you need to grow. Only a humble person is a truly learning person, a teachable person. James is going to take us deeper in on this. He's going to show us exactly how to live wisely on God's terms. But first, he's going to spend some time showing us how to be fools. And again, it's not about our SAT scores. Let me keep reading. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, don't boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Now, is that what you would have expected? If I told you that we were going to look at the Bible's prescription for wisdom and specifically how to make sure that as smart people we don't do dumb things, would you have thought that it was going to involve a conversation about selfish ambition and envy? Probably not, which is why we ought to dig into this, because there's something here we obviously aren't used to hearing, or at least two schools of things that we're not used to connecting. So let's do that. First, what exactly is bitter envy? And what exactly is selfish ambition? I think we understand selfish ambition better than we do envy, so let's start there and then spend the bulk of our time on envy. Selfish ambition is the art of self-promotion. It's seeking attention for ourselves. It's pursuing vainglory. It's pushing for our own agenda or to promote ourselves. It's when you're preoccupied with your reputation, your platform, your success, your influence. Envy is more subtle, and it's less recognized. In fact, when we think of envy, we tend to think it's just not that big a deal. I mean, isn't it just looking at somebody and wishing you had a little bit of what they had? What's the harm in that? But that's not the real dirt on envy. And it's not why it's talked about throughout the Bible as one of the deadliest of sins and has been marked throughout Christian history as one of the deadliest of sins, spiritually deadly, even making the list known as the 7 deadly sins, which are anger, sloth, gluttony, greed, lust, pride, and envy. Here's what's so deadly about envy. Envy, left unchecked and given a free rein, will go on a relational lifestyle warpath. That's what makes it the heart of foolishness. And here's how envy works. It begins with desire. We see something that somebody has or that they can do and they've achieved, and we wish we had it or could do it or had achieved it. So somebody makes $50,000 a year, they envy the person who makes $150,000 a year. The C student envies the A student. But that's just where it begins. If unchecked, the desire for the thing turns into a dislike for the person who has the thing. In fact, that's what the word envy literally means. The word means to look onto somebody with malice, to have an evil eye toward someone. You don't celebrate what they have. You don't celebrate what they've done. You resent it and you resent them. You turn hostile. It becomes personal, almost as if they are getting or experiencing what rightly belongs to you, almost like they took it from you or something. So this isn't just about desiring something. It involves a whole bunch of toxic junk about the other person having it. And that junk not only turns relationally toxic, but leads to hostility. Envy, unchecked, then enjoys bad things happening to the person that is envied, or at least something bad happening to what it is that they have that you envy. Envy can lead to the celebration of pain and suffering and failings and mistakes and loss and tragedy in the life of that person. Now you may say, hey, I don't do that. Well, maybe you don't. I find myself doing it with great ease without even hardly realizing it. I mean, play it out. If you're a writer, do you secretly like it when the novel of another author fails? If you're a business leader, do you secretly enjoy it when a competing leader is investigated for financial malfeasance or another competing company files a really weak quarterly earnings report? I mean, you fill in the blank. The politician who slips, the priest caught in sexual sin, the star athlete of a team that you don't like because they're, beat your team that you like. You enjoy it when you hear that their star athlete got injured. I mean, envy just leads to the celebration of those kinds of things. The Germans have a word for it, Schadenfreude, and it means joy at the suffering of another. But envy will want to take you even further away than just dislike. If unchecked in our lives, envy will take the dislike that it has created and then try to lead you to destroy whatever it is that you were desiring in the other person's life. It will actually get you to try and take it away from them. Envy can be like the rabies of the heart. It will eventually take over your life. Now, let's remember what James is wanting us to see. He's wanting us to connect some very important dots here, the dots between envy and foolishness and the life of wisdom. How does envy create a fool and tear away at wisdom? Yes, it's irrational madness and it spreads its relational insanity wherever it goes. But beyond that, what is so fundamentally foolish about it and so destructive to right living and wisdom? Well, let's see if we can trace this back. First, when you envy, you're kept from looking at yourself the way you should. When you fixate on somebody else, you don't fixate on yourself. It keeps you from looking at things the way that you should. We've all heard the phrase, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Well, maybe instead of looking at the grass on the other side of the fence, you should just water your own. When all you do is look at others in envy, focusing on what they have compared to what you don't, you never do what it takes to become who you were meant to be. Now, a second thing to consider is that when you give in to envy, it also keeps you from looking at others the way you should. Let's say someone achieved a particular position that you would like to achieve. Envy simply desires it, resents it, and the person who achieved it, and if not unchecked, seeks to undermine the person and their achievement. It takes you on a journey of desire, resentment, and eventually destruction. But that doesn't do anything toward you getting a similar position, you achieving something. It doesn't bring one bit of change to your life. See, what you should be doing is looking at them and their achievement and saying, what can I learn about how they achieved that? See, here's where the humility kicks in. Remember, it's humility that makes you teachable. When you move past envy toward a sense of security in regard to who you are and who God made you to be and who He's made others to be, then you can begin to celebrate the life of others and draw from their experiences and, yes, victories and achievements for your own. Instead of having them threaten you, maybe you reacted only with envy as a result, they can become a mentor, a role model, a resource. Well, finally, envy will not only keep you from looking at what needs attention in your own life and keep you from learning from others about how to take bigger and better hills on your own, it will eventually destroy whatever life you have. It really is ironic, but it's true. Envy, left unchecked, seeks to destroy what is envied, but what is ultimately destroyed in that process is the one given over to the envy. Henry Fairley once wrote that envy is so deadly, not so much because it destroys us, but it really just refuses to let us live. So, with that in mind, what it means to be foolish through selfish ambition and bitter envy, James then gives us a snapshot very quickly of what God's wisdom looks like, the opposite of selfish ambition and bitter jealousy and envy. Let me read it. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. And there you find the most succinct description of a wisely led, wisely lived life in the entire Bible. And if you notice, there's 8 marks given there. And we could build an entire series around each one of them, but let's just give each one like a few seconds of introduction so that we can understand all that James just gave us. He said, first, wisdom is pure, which means you aren't thinking about yourself. You're free of self-seeking, self-promotion, or position. You're free of ulterior motives. You're clean in attitude and spirit. Second, wisdom is peace-loving, which means it's non-divisive, non-competitive. The goal is never friction, but peace. Third, wisdom is considerate. It thinks of other people. It's empathetic. A good translation of the word James used there could also be gentle or patient, in the sense of not being concerned with your rights, your needs, and your desires. One translator called it a sweet reasonableness. Fourth, wisdom is submissive, and here the meaning is being willing to yield to others. First and foremost, you yield to God, but also willing to yield to others. You're not power hungry. Fifth, wisdom is full of mercy. Mercy is caring about others who are going through very difficult times. But more specifically, mercy is about what you demonstrate towards someone in a position of vulnerability when you have power. When you could extract revenge or take advantage or punish, you don't, because you're driven by mercy. Sixth, wisdom is full of good fruit, meaning a life that is littered with good acts and deeds. There's just not a trail of bodies behind you, but a trail of testimonies singing your praise. Seventh, wisdom is impartial. It's no respecter of persons. It isn't into favoritism. It's not judgmental. It doesn't rank people in terms of worth or value. It's devoid of prejudice. And finally, wisdom, he writes, is sincere. It's authentic, real. It's not phony, without hypocrisy. It's not two-faced. So that's the anti-selfish ambition, the anti-envy, anti-fool life of wisdom. And to sum it all up, James just puts in this final word: peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. In other words, that kind of wise living will be surrounded with peace, not the divides of ambition and envy, but peace, both in their public and their private lives. The opposite of the chaos and suffering that comes with foolishness, which is regret. So, what is the best question ever? What is the wise thing to do? And what is the wise thing to do? James just told us.